I'm Matt McClure.
And I'm Francesca Maxime, and this is Currents.
The Pope and the President, a day away from their first face-to-face. We'll hear from a Catholic journalist who met with President Obama last week.
What I didn't expect to hear was the warm appreciation he had for Catholic social teaching.
Ahead of that meeting, the Pope offers his prayers for the G8 summit.
And prayers for life from a leading Brooklyn activist.
A very small amount of our time is actually involved in politics. Our whole time is involved in the conversion of hearts.
Well, it is almost here. On Friday, Pope Benedict and President Obama will meet for the very first time, while the president is in Italy for the G8 summit. The meeting has been highly anticipated for months, and in advance of the trip, Obama last week met with a handful of Catholic journalists.
And one of them was Father Drew Christiansen. He's editor-in-chief of the Catholic magazine America. Our Nathalia Ortiz had an opportunity to speak with Father Christiansen at his Midtown office.
Father Christiansen, welcome to Currents.
Thank you, Natalia.
My first question is, what was it like being one of the few journalists, religious journalists, selected to meet with President Obama?
It was curious because we weren't sure exactly what it was about. The first emails we got were very cryptic, and we didn't know whether we were journalists or just invited as experts on Catholicism who were to advise him. And then by the time we got the third email, the night before, we discovered it was a meeting of journalists. So our curiosity was saved a little bit. And we also thought the president would have more to kind of introduce the event. But he had a short introduction that said his visit with the Pope was like a visit to any head of state, and that there's common ground and there are places where there are differences, and they would explore them. But there was also more, because the Pope was the leader of more than 1 billion Catholics in the world, and because the Catholic Church had such an important role to play in the United States. And so he thought he'd like to talk to us before he went to visit the Pope in the Vatican this Friday.
As we all know, President Obama has his share of critics. Many are conservatives and some are Catholics. Do you think he's doing anything right?
Oh yes, I think the president's doing a number of things right. We talked in particular about the G8 meeting that he's going to be attending immediately prior to his meeting with the Holy Father. And the Pope and the Holy See have been very interested in how to offset the impact of the global economic crisis on the world's poor. And it was clear to me from his answers that the president is right on top of that issue. He talked about the commitments that he and others had made in London on the 20th. I'm sorry, in April rather, and at the G20. And that at this meeting, he hoped to urge others to do what the U.S. did and increase their aid to the International Monetary Fund. He said that they'd be working on doubling U.S. food aid and increasing or directing U.S. economic aid to agricultural self-sufficiency in third world countries.
What, if anything, surprised you about the meeting with President Obama? Did anything come of it that you did not expect?
What I didn't expect to hear was the warm appreciation he had for Catholic social teaching. He clearly had a strong impact in forming a certain part of his moral imagination and decision-making, and he clearly understands it. I mean, he talked at one point about Catholic social teaching being a moral compass for the whole society on issues of distribution, and that our country needed to be not just wealthy, but just. And his warm appreciation for Cardinal Benedict, who was head of the Archdiocese of Chicago when he first served as a community organizer there.
Do you think President Obama and his administration are anti-Catholic or hostile to religion in general?
No, I don't. I think he's very interested in the good that religion can do in society. Where there are differences among religious people, he wants to bring them together to find common ground, as he's looking to do on the abortion issue. I think the Holy Father and various organs of the Holy See have made it clear that they like his moves and trust his moves to look for common ground as being consistent with what they think must be done to help end abortion.
Give us your impression of President Obama as a person.
Well, I think he's extremely mature as a person. I think more than most people, he is comfortable in his own skin, which is quite remarkable for a person who is in some ways a self-made man. And as his biographer, Richard Wolff, says, he didn't have a father. He had a father for a year, stepfather for a couple of years, and then was raised by his mother. He chose to be a Christian, although she was a hippie, New Age kind of person, and he had exposure to Islam. He chose to be a Christian. He chose to be a father and a family man. So he's in some ways, he's self-made. On the other hand, he's very aware of, he's very self-reflective is the word I'm looking for. The president described the need to be reflective in light of the church's teaching, but also of our commitment to Jesus Christ, which really, the religious dimension of his life is very real. And the need that the encounter with the church's teaching and the encounter with Jesus has in asking us to reform ourselves was very real. I was really impressed by that. He really looks so favorably on the church's role to shape American life and its values that what he discovered with Cardinal Benedict and the seamless garment was a way of thinking about public life that he still holds on to. He has his differences and difficulties on issues of abortion, but he's moving far closer to us on that issue than a lot of his critics would want to acknowledge. I mean, he really understands that abortion is not something that ought to be encouraged, that it's not something that ought to be thought as ordinary. But I think by and large, what's remarkable about him is that he really is a man who believes you need to reflect on what you learn and let it change you.
Father Drew Christiansen, editor-in-chief of America magazine. He had much more to say about the Catholic media and the Pope's new encyclical. We'll hear that part of the conversation a little later on in our show. But first, stay tuned. There's more currents ahead, including all the day's headlines.
Welcome back to Currents. I'm Matt McClure.
And I'm Francesca Maxime. Coming up later on the show, Witnessing for Life on the streets of New York. It's a local priest effort, and it's turned into an international movement. But first, we have the day's headlines. As we have been telling you, Pope Benedict will meet with President Obama tomorrow. Obama is in Italy for the G8 summit. And although the Pope will not be in on those meetings, they are on his mind, as we hear from Rome Reports.
The Pope has asked everyone to pray so that the G8 summit talks produce measures that benefit all countries, especially underdeveloped ones.
Recemos para que en el encuentro de jefes de Estado y de Gobierno que se celebra en estos días en L'Aquila se tomen decisiones que beneficien a todos los pueblos, especialmente a los más pobres.
The Pope said he hopes his encyclical Caritas in Veritate helps mankind commit to building a future in which nobody is excluded. After the general audience, Benedict XVI received some of the first ladies of heads of state participating in the G8 summit. The Pope greeted them affectionately and exchanged a few words with the wives of the presidents of Mexico, South Africa, India, Sweden, and the United Kingdom. The wife of the President of the European Commission and the wife of the President of the Food and Agriculture Organization were also present. Benedict XVI recognized the wife of the President of the European Commission and two Italian ministers who accompanied her. The Italian Minister of Education took the opportunity to congratulate the Pope for his encyclical, and he told him that it was a very long and interesting document. Benedict XVI replied with a big smile.
The Pope is also taking the opportunity to greet not only the wives of world leaders while they visit Italy, but also some of the leaders themselves. And he's giving each a copy of his new encyclical. Today, the Pope met with South Korea's president and Australian Prime Minister Kevin Rudd, who was raised Catholic but now attends an Anglican church. On Monday, Benedict met the Prime Minister of Japan, who is Catholic.
And President Obama will be bringing a gift for the Pope, a stole given to Obama by the religious order the Redemptorists. The stole, or vestment, had been placed on the remains of the 19th century priest St. John Neumann, making it a relic. Neumann is buried in Philadelphia. Well, in a sports-related story now, soccer legend Pelé is sharing his thoughts about his sport and his life with the Vatican's newspaper. Pelé says he's grateful to God for giving him, quote, the gift of playing soccer, and denounced the violence that he says has become part of the game. He says he's had the opportunity to meet with and receive the blessings of 3 popes, Paul VI, John Paul II, and Pope Benedict. Stay tuned, there's much more current straight ahead.
Just ahead, we continue our conversation with the editor of America magazine.
People will see that there are debates and that we just don't have one line, although we do want to represent what the official line of the church is.
Welcome back to Currents. Earlier in the program, we showed you part 1 of Nathalia Ortiz's interview with Father Drew Christiansen. He's the editor-in-chief of America magazine.
Well, Father Christiansen was among a small group of Catholic journalists who met with President Obama last week. But Nathalia also had the opportunity to speak with Father Drew on a number of topics, including what it's like to lead a Catholic magazine.
Father Christiansen, how does a Catholic media entity whose editor-in-chief is a member of the clergy maintain credibility with its readers? Many might be concerned about objectivity when reporting certain issues.
Well, I think people have to understand that this magazine is different than other magazines in that it's sponsored by the Jesuits who have a vow of obedience and a particular role of service to the Holy See. And part of our charter originally was to make Catholic teaching known, to see that Americans understood it, and to see that it had a role in public debate in this country. So when they come to us, they come to us for what Catholics are thinking, meaning official Catholics as well as Catholics in other positions. I also think that people will continue to see in our pages debates on various issues. We had one last year on hydration and nutrition. We've had debates over both on the website and in the magazine about Notre Dame's invitation to President Obama. We have an upcoming one on the catechetical directory of the bishops. So people will see that there are debates and that we just don't have one line, although we do want to represent what the official line of the church is and the official work of the bishops in this country.
Give us your comments on the encyclical that was released this week.
Well, I think it's a brilliant document. It's a long document, a complex document, but it has a really new dimension, which is to talk about an economy of what he calls gratuitousness or gratuity or grace, we'd say, I think, meaning there needs to be more room in the whole economy for initiatives that are generous in understanding that the goal of all social activity is the promotion of the welfare of human beings. And that profit is admissible there, but it shouldn't be the controlling element, that there needs to be equally a concern for the common good, and there should be a special sector that, though it makes profit, is explicitly aimed at promoting the common good in various ways.
What challenges do you think Catholic media entities face that traditional or conventional media entities do not?
Well, I think that we have a problem that we don't have a substantial Catholic culture that looks to Catholic media for an understanding of the Catholic life. They're focused on their local parish. And so, unlike evangelicals who, for various reasons, may support large media enterprises, we don't have, to a considerable extent, those kind of large enterprises in this country. And I think that's one of the challenges we have, is creating larger Catholic audiences. I think another problem is that frequently diocesan papers, at least, don't acquaint people with what's going on in the church nationally or internationally, and are basically become kind of diocesan newsletters. And that's sometimes because of decisions of local ordinaries. I think the church would be far healthier if they were able to carry all that news.
How does Catholic media measure up in terms of technical advancements? Online, internet, interactivity?
Well, you know, I think we're moving, but the environment changes so fast. I mean, for 2 years in a row, we've won the Catholic Press Association award for the best website. But I know, you know, how we're scrambling to kind of keep up, and how to assess which technologies are the ones that will move ahead, or which ones are going to disappear in 6 months is very difficult. It's very hard to know.
You've worked as a university professor and internationally for Catholic causes. How does this job measure up?
Well, it's very interesting. You're able to engage in a lot of debates. It's not as focused as being a university professor, but you are on top of a lot of things, in touch with a lot of people, which makes it very interesting. I think also you know that you're having a role in setting the agenda and setting the terms of debate, which I think is an important thing. We know that leaders in the church read America to understand what other leaders are thinking. So that's an important role.
Thank you for being with us.
It's good to be with you, Nathalia, and with your viewers.
Thank you.
And that is Father Drew Christiansen, the editor-in-chief of America Magazine. Stay tuned. There's much more current straight ahead.
Witnessing for life in the streets of the city.
I don't go to give talks. I go to come to teach people how to fish.
Welcome back. We've already heard tonight about President Obama and his imminent meeting with Pope Benedict. For many Catholics, the life issues are a particular bone of contention with the president.
That's right, and it all kind of, well, at least part of it stems with the fact that the president's allowed funding to groups who perform abortions overseas. Many would argue with that, and there are many who actually do speak out against abortion, including the man that you're about to meet, Monsignor Philip Riley, who founded Helpers of God's Precious Infants in Brooklyn. It's expanded, though, to include multiple chapters around the world. And tonight, Monsignor Riley is our eyewitness.
My name is Monsignor Riley. I'm the director of the Helpers of God's Precious Infant, which is a group, a pro-life group that started here in the Diocese of Brooklyn. Its approach is quite different than many pro-life approaches, which are mostly political or activist. They're doing things. We are very small amount of our time is actually involved in politics. Our whole time is involved in the conversion of hearts. And I have found, and I observed with the people who do this, that they themselves have really grown as Christians. They themselves have grown in holiness. That the approach that we use is the realization that the living, risen Christ continues his work through his mystical body. And the people who are giving him permission to do this, to be his instruments, are many people that you would least suspect to be the ones that God would use to change this culture. I have many grandmothers and grandfathers. I have many young women and men who were never married, but had tremendous goodness and potential. I have widow and widowers. So we have married people too, but we have really involved God's people, and they just keep growing in holiness because they're sacrificing their time, not even thinking about themselves any longer. Many people get involved in the Helpers. They were thinking of retiring and going around traveling all over the world, and they end up that they're traveling to abortion clinics on Saturday mornings and even during the week. And they are becoming, in their old age, the father and mother of incredible amounts of young babies, and they're the ones who are assisting. The Helpers all will tell you, almost to a man and woman, that it has been a great blessing to them, as well as to the women and to the children, that they have really found out what it means to be a Christian. A Christian is to have Christ living within you, to bring Christ to the people, to sacrifice, to be a victim with Christ. And in the process of doing this, you start to change the world, or Jesus changes the world through you. I don't have to say anything. I don't go to give talks. I go to come to teach people how to fish. I leave behind my fishing rod, my reel, and they go fishing. I go back and I see incredible fish being caught by these people all over the world. And they just getting bigger fish than myself. It's a tremendous, the hand in the work of God is clear. I just try to stay out of his way.
Monsignor Philip Riley, tonight's eyewitness. And I understand that you have kind of a related story that you're going to talk about on tomorrow's show in an interview that you're going to do.
That's right. I was very fortunate today to be able to interview a leading Catholic bioethicist. His name is Father Tadeusz Pacholczyk, and he's actually out of Philadelphia. He swung by our studios today, so we could talk to him a little bit about the whole stem cell debate and how that plays into some of the issues that Monsignor Riley was talking about earlier.
Well, from Philadelphia, that's not quite swinging by. That's a little bit of a trip.
Well, he was very kind to do it, and he's extremely well versed on the subject, and talks a little bit about how the regulations that have been passed federally this week are going to impact the church and the world, for that matter.
All right, well, great. Well, we'll look forward to that coming up tomorrow then.
Sounds good. Well, that is all for this particular edition of Currents. On tomorrow's show, parents upset following the ouster of an elementary school principal in Park Slope. We'll bring you the latest.
That and more on tomorrow's episode of Currents. And remember, we're always online. netny.net/currents is the website. There you can watch clips from the show and check out our blog. It's called Riding the Wave.
You can also follow us on Twitter. Just head over to twitter.com/currentsny.
Just tweet right along with us.
That's right. We are very progressive. At least we strive to be. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Francesca Maxime.
And I'm Matt McClure. Have a great night.